I'm Jim Longworth, and welcome to another edition of Forsyth County Connections, coming to you from the Government Center in downtown Winston-Salem. We hope you'll be with us for the entire program. Lots to discuss. We have topics on genealogy and swimming pool inspections and all sorts of things. But where we want to start is talking about pets, and we do that with an expert in this field. With me now is my friend Captain Van Loveland. He's Animal Services Division for Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, I understand from an email you sent me one day, there's been some changes to the ordinance on pet licensing. What do you mean?
Yeah, so we've been working with the Forsyth County Animal Advisory Board for a couple of years now on looking at the requirement of pet licensing here in Forsyth County. So the requirement was that if you had any cat or dog, it had to be licensed in the county. Used to be under the tax department, and then it transitioned over into animal services. So if you had a cat or a dog and it was not spayed or neutered, meaning it was not fixed, the license was $25. If it was spayed or neutered, it was $5. So for the last couple of years, we've been doing a lot of research on that with the Animal Advisory Board and looking at, is it really beneficial to keep having that licensing? And the original thought was that the licensing would help people to spay and neuter their pets to control the population.
Right.
Doing research both nationally and here in the state of North Carolina, a lot of the counties and cities that had that licensing ended up doing away with it because it just really wasn't doing what they thought it was going to do of getting people to spay and neuter their pets.
Yeah, that's too bad. And I'm also glad you mentioned the C word, CATS, because I can't tell you how many people I've come up to and said, well, I have 2 cats. I don't have to license them. That's not true.
Originally that was not true prior to the ordinance change, but all cats and dogs had to be licensed in Forsyth County.
What are the requirements currently, or maybe there's been some change to it, in terms of vaccinations regarding things that you have to have pets vaccinated for?
Yeah, so North Carolina State General Statute requires that all cats and dogs and ferrets that are older than 4 months old have to be vaccinated against rabies. That is currently the only vaccine that is required. For anyone that doesn't know, rabies is a deadly disease to humans as well as to animals. And so that's the one that's required for the state because it is a public health hazard.
You'd say, well, yeah, wait a minute, Captain. The thing is, I saw you on the TV show talking about this, but I keep my dog inside 90% of the time. Why do I need rabies vaccination?
So even if the animal is kept inside, rabies is required by the state. It can be transmitted through a number of different means. And even if your dog is out for a short period of time or your cat's out for a very short period of time, a very short encounter with an animal that is rabid or something that is transmitting that disease could transmit that disease to them. So it is required.
Let me circle back to the thing you were talking about a minute ago on spaying and neutering. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. Under county regulations now, do I have to have a pet spayed or neutered, or it's still an option?
No. So at this time, you currently do not have to have your pet spayed or neutered. We highly recommend you spay or neuter your pet so that we help control the population, but at this point, it is not required.
There's something that became popular, this microchipping thing that you sent me an email about this one day, and I was reading about it. I can't remember what year it really got popular, but there was a time there where it became popular for people to put microchips, have the vets put them in their dog or cat. Are you a big believer in that?
I am. I have 2 dogs myself. Both of my dogs are microchipped. Anything that is adopted through the Forsyth Humane Society or a welfare group is typically microchipped. The big thing with microchipping is that we tell people to make sure that they keep that information up to date. Our officers out in the field have microchip scanners in their vehicles. So when we come across an animal, we can scan it immediately. And if that information is up to date, then we can quickly return that cat or that dog to its owner without it having to go to the shelter and take up space there.
I remember somebody coming up to me one day and said, I'm an animal lover. I have a couple of dogs, and boy, I don't want to have something put in them like that. I bet, is it a big deal or not?
It's not a big deal. They put it in the back of the neck where there's a lot of fatty tissue in the dogs and cats, so it doesn't hurt them at all. It's just a little syringe you put in there and insert the microchip. And then, like I said, the big thing is making sure you keep that information up to date online so that we always know who the current owner is on that animal.
Right. And of course, the old-fashioned thing of your dog can always get loose when you don't think, and it's good to have those tags and
exactly
all that stuff. Hey, is there a website people can go to find out more about what we're talking about?
Yeah. So if they go to the sheriff's website through the county, then we have a tab there on animal services. We have all of the information related to spay neuter, our low-cost rabies clinics that we offer, as well as if you have a lost pet or a found pet, how to list those on our website so that we can get those reunited with their owners, as well as just other valuable information related to wildlife and rabies as well.
Captain, thanks for all this information. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, you come back sometime?
Oh, yes, definitely.
All right. We'll be right back after this.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see.
DEPR.
Mental illness doesn't show up on a scale.
Bipolar?
Sorting out a mental health concern takes professional diagnosis and treatment.
Anxiety. I thought so.
If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support.
Back now for Forsyth County Connections. And so far in doing these programs, one thing we haven't talked about is telehealth. So I said to myself, who knows about this? And this gentleman does. Dr. Darrell Nelson is medical director for Forsyth County Emergency Services, also an ER physician with Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. Busy man. What is telehealth?
Telehealth is, when you look at it in its basic form, it's just a patient and a provider interacting that are not in the same location.
Okay.
So they're distant from each other, and people define it in different ways. Telehealth, telemedicine. Telehealth's kind of the big umbrella term, and then telemedicine gets a little bit more granular. So you may interact with a patient over a video, audio video. You may interact by text messages, email. So beyond just the telehealth umbrella, it's just whenever a provider and a patient are interacting, not in the same room.
All right. Now, let me ask you this. How has telehealth, telemedicine changed over the past years? And you can include in that answer how the pandemic did or didn't affect those changes.
It drastically changed over the last few years, and COVID has also drastically changed telehealth. Telehealth has been with us for, well over a decade. It's been a rather small segment of medicine, mostly because of payment issues. But COVID actually really freed up some of that reimbursement scheme. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services actually relaxed some of the rules because of social distancing and the need to keep quarantining sick and well people from being in the same spots. Telehealth has robustly increased in just the last few years.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong about this. I'm learning about it as I go. But now, the telehealth is a general thing, it's the umbrella thing you're talking about, provided through our 911 system. What does that service look like?
Yeah, really interesting, and not a lot of folks are doing this in the country. Folks are experimenting with it. Telehealth through our 911 communication. So when someone calls 911 and it's screened as a medical problem, they go through a series of questions that our telecommunicators ask, and our telecommunicators using a medical program can actually prioritize them. Is this a true emergency? Is it an urgency? Or is it a non-emergency?
So the operator is almost acting as a triage.
Triage, absolutely. It is a form of triage. And those folks that screen to be non-emergency or less urgent, we can offer them the opportunity to connect to a telehealth provider directly through the 911 center. Our hopes is that telehealth provider can actually provide all that's needed for that patient and hopefully keep that patient from even entering the 911 system.
Now, other than being involved with the 911 system, how else can telehealth be utilized within, say, the EMS system?
Several ways. So beyond the 911 center, once a paramedic has actually made contact with a patient, they may deem that patient seems to be relatively stable, have a relatively minor complaint. They could contact a telehealth provider directly on scene, and perhaps that telehealth provider could actually provide all the care that's needed there on scene and actually release that crew back into the 911 system. So that could be a paramedic interfacing with a non-EMS physician. We could also use telehealth with our medical directors who are EMS physicians to actually give direct orders and actually see and hear the patient real time. We could also connect them with alternative destinations. So maybe that patient does need to be seen by a provider, but the telehealth provider could actually facilitate the crew taking that patient to maybe an urgent care or a physician's office that accepts the non-traditional EMS transport.
And then if all this works the way it's supposed to, and with all the triaging and with the system in place, would it be true to say, or accurate to say, that it's going to cut down on unnecessary ambulance trips?
That's our hope. Our hope is that it will deliver the right care to the right patient at the right time and hopefully decrease the need for our ambulances and actually hopefully would increase our efficiency and increase our ability to answer those more priority calls.
Sure. Let me put you on the spot before we run out of time here. Is there a general website or something that people can go to learn more about emergency medical and emergency services that they should know about, or something to get more information?
Sure. Forsyth County Emergency Services does have a website. You can follow those links, and there's very good information. You can even access that through the Forsyth County government website as well.
Or I can just put your home number up on the screen. Everybody call you or Darren Ziegler one, and we won't do that. Hey, look, seriously, thanks for all the great information and for doing what you're doing for everybody.
Thank you. Thanks
All
for
right,
having me.
Doc.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after that.
Performing on stage takes mental and physical preparation. But one thing I never thought to prepare for was cervical cancer. 91% of cervical cancers are caused by the human papillomavirus, or HPV. The good news is there are vaccines that can protect you or your children from cancer. I survived my cancer, but you can stop cancer before it starts. Talk to your doctor and go to thinkaboutthelink.org to learn more.
Back now on Forsyth County Connections, I want to find out more about woodland stewardship. And I'm a fairly smart person, so I know where to go. And I found this gentleman here, roaming the halls. Kirby Robinson, Forsyth County's Deputy General Services Director. Thanks for coming by the show.
Thanks for having me.
Woodland stewardship, because we don't hear a lot about that. What is it?
Yeah, yes, sir. So a lot of times when you think of the county, you think of our facilities. You think of the government center, the courthouse, the libraries, whatever it may be. But the county has a ton of just fantastic natural resources. So woodland stewardship is all about how do we promote, preserve, and protect our natural resources. It's about doing something significant and generational for the future benefit of Forsyth County. So it's a program that really involves managing those properties, managing our natural resources in a variety of ways through vegetation control, so controlling things like kudzu that shouldn't be there, timber management, so making sure we promote the overall health of a woodland stand, and then reforestation.
Now, give me an example of where you might be engaged in woodland stewardship.
So we've got approximately 850 acres of land in our program right now across 3 properties.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got Rolling Hills, which is in Tobaccoville, CG Hill Park, which is in Pufftown, and then Horizons, which is in Rural Hall.
Right. Now, how would you assess the current status of your program? How are things going?
Well, it's not a quick program. I mean, it's something that's going to happen over a number of years. We're probably 3 or 4 years in now. Rolling Hills is the furthest along. We've gone out and we've eradicated kudzu and a variety of other things that should not be on the property. We've actually done some timber harvesting out there now.
Right.
Getting ready to do some reforestation, some replanting there. Horizons and CG Hill have both been through the vegetation control component of the program. Horizons is next up for timber management. CG Hill's kind of been reserved.
Let's talk about timber for a second, because a lot of people, even if they don't have a direct interest in it, they might live next to a forest area or something and might wonder what's going on. There's something called, in your industry, best practices. What is that, and how do you adhere to those in what you're doing with timber management?
It's a great question. So, when we started this, the county manager asked me to help with. I knew nothing about trees, but I knew where to go or to find people that did, and that's North Carolina Forest Service. So we started with them. We said, we've got these great natural resources. What should we do with them? And they went out to all 3 properties, came up with a very high-level management plan. Their recommendation was, well, go hire somebody to represent your interests here. So the county and the board approved a contract with a consulting forester. It's really our expert on the ground to make sure that, when we develop and implement the program, we're doing it the right way. They oversee it over the course of time. So if you have a logger out on a piece of property, they're going to be out there on the ground making sure, the environmental controls are in place or whatever.
Somebody's got to be looking out for the, I guess, which leads me to the question, even if somebody says, well, wait a minute, I don't understand too much about this. I really don't care about timber today. I don't care about kudzu. But what you're doing and making sure that you're working for our interest really benefits everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. So again, it's about doing something generational that future citizens of Forsyth County will see. I'll give you a couple of examples of the value of the program. So at CG Hill, we've identified kind of a stand of trees that we're calling a legacy forest. They're unique trees, they're really old, and when we go back in and replant, instead of just doing, rows and rows of pine trees, we say, well, what would be really cool in a park is to plant some different type of trees. So, 20, 30 years, when you go on a hike in CG Hill Park, you're gonna see some cool stuff. Timber management also supports future park development. So when we go to develop Horizons Parks trail system in the future, well, the logging roads are going to be the trail network. So not only does it save money in development, it just makes that more possible.
Well, that's a great answer to the question, because that's exactly what I thought you were going to say, that, I mean, the community is going to benefit from this for generations and generations to come. You might not be able to see everything right now, but going down those trails and everything, it's protecting the timber and the woodlands. It's just great. Is there a particular website you have where people can find out more information about good stewardship for the resources?
It's a great question again. So before we do anything at a property, we always hold a community meeting. So I'd make sure folks just, on the county's website, we publicize those. We send out notices locally to them. We always want to make sure folks know what we're doing out there. You see a big truck pulling out of our property with some logs on the back, you want to know what it is.
Exactly.
But everything we do, number one, we brief the board on. I want to make sure that they're good with it and they approve it. We publicize it on our website and on the park's website specifically. When we make changes in a park, it would be there.
Kirby, I appreciate the information. This is something I wanted to find out about, and I hope you come back sometime.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back after this.
This is what too much sounds like. This is what stress feels like. And this is what help feels like. If you've lost a job, worry about your next meal, or have trouble making it through the day, we can help. Text STRESS to 211-211 to find a solution.
Back now for Forsyth County Connections, and we're going to talk about something that you probably have not heard a lot about on television, and that is beekeeping and why it's important to all of us, sort of directly and indirectly. We're going to do this with an expert. Phyllis Smith is Forsyth County Extension Agent for Natural Resources and Environmental Systems. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You've been doing beekeeping and working with honeybees for a long time, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I actually started back in the 1970s when I was a teenager with my dad, which kind of makes me feel a little bit old, but as a result, I've seen a lot of changes in beekeeping since that time.
Yeah, what do you mean changes, and how is it different?
Well, beekeepers have always had challenges. There's always been predators like bears and skunks and certain diseases and things that can get into your hive. But what we saw in the 1980s was that two types of parasitic mites were introduced into North Carolina. And the worst of these, the varroa mite, hit North Carolina in 1990. Beekeepers were not prepared for how rapidly it spread or how damaging it was to bees. And a lot of beekeepers, including my dad, lost all of their hives during that period.
What did it do? Just kill the bees?
Well, they're an ectoparasite, and at first we thought when it first hit that they were like bloodsuckers, like a tick or something. What researchers have discovered now is that they actually feed on the fat bodies of bees, and that weakens them, but then they also introduce a number of viruses into our beehives. We don't have any cures for those viruses.
Oh, man. Now, let me get something that I want to ask you about, which is the importance of honeybees to the state economy.
Oh, they're very important. Beekeepers in our state harvest about 5.5 million pounds of honey a year, resulting in about $10 million in sales, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Bees, or honeybees, are the primary insect pollinators for things like apples, blackberries, melons, peaches, a lot of the really good food we love to eat. They pollinate it. So when you factor in their pollination services, it's estimated that they contribute about $96 million a year to our ag economy. So they're very important.
I see a jar of honey. I'm assuming it's honey.
It's honey, yeah.
And this is pure, isn't it?
It is. It's pure, and it's also so dark. People are used to, I think, seeing a lighter colored honey.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things about honey. It comes in so many different varieties based on the nectar source. That's buckwheat honey.
Buckwheat honey.
Buckwheat honey is very dark. It's very strong. A lot of people don't like it, but I do. A lot of people prefer the lighter honeys like clover or sourwood, which are milder.
That was my nickname in high school, lighter honey. No, but how does honey like this? I mean, how is it set apart from other kinds of sweeteners? Why is honey a good sweetener?
Well, a lot of reasons. One thing is that you can just eat honey straight from the hive. It doesn't have to be processed.
Right.
A lot of other sweeteners do come from plants, but they have to be very highly processed. So, we have that natural factor with the honey. And preferably, I prefer the taste of honey. The sugars that are in it give it that taste, and then the nectar sources. It's a very quick source of energy. But honey also has vitamins, minerals, a little bit of pollen and protein in it that give it some unique characteristics that ordinary sweeteners don't have.
So when we go to the store and we see something that says organic or natural honey or whatever, can we trust that that's kind of like what you have, or has it still been processed?
Well, you really can't have organic honey because you cannot control where your bees go
Okay.
to collect their nectar. What we have in North Carolina is a program called NC Naturally Certified. And if a beekeeper's in that program, then you know that the honey from that hive has not been treated with certain pesticides, antibiotics, things like that by the beekeeper. But the bees are really going to go and collect nectar where they want. That's why it's important that, any of us that are out applying pesticides or herbicides, we do it right, that we never misuse them. We never apply them to open flowers where bees are working.
Right.
And that will help protect the bees, and it will also help protect us when
Kind
we
of a common
consume their
sense,
honey.
kind of a common sense thing. Don't
Right.
spray poison stuff around a pond that you've got, koi in or something. All right. Is there a website people can go to if they want more information about what we're talking about with beekeeping, or even B, maybe interested in getting into beekeeping?
There's several websites. North Carolina State has an apiculture program. The North Carolina State Beekeepers Association, you can Google that. Also
Okay.
here in Forsyth County, we have the Forsyth County Beekeepers Association. So, when I talk about the challenges of beekeeping, I don't want to discourage people from it. I
Right.
want to encourage them to go into it knowing what challenges they face, but get help from North Carolina Cooperative Extension
Right.
so that you get the training that you know to deal with these challenges today. We need our beekeepers.
We do, and we need you. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back after this.
I keep hearing how things are getting back to normal. Is this normal? So much has changed. It's time to discover the new person I am now. For some great tips on finding your new normal, visit yourlifeyourvoice.org.
There's so much to see in this life's journey, and the view just keeps getting better. But untreated hearing loss can put us at risk for missing out. Stay connected so you can keep doing what you love. Get a hearing health check every year.
Back now for our final segment of this edition of Forsyth County Connections. So glad you stayed with us thus far. We want to talk about something over the next few minutes that doesn't get a lot of attention. But we're going to talk with Matthew Hamby. He's with me now. He's a dress coordinator for MAP Forsyth. Let me say that again. He's not a dress coordinator. He is an address coordinator. Welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
What's involved in assigning addresses in Forsyth County? What does all that mean?
Well, so back in 2015, the job of assigning addresses was moved from the City of Winston Planning Department to MAP Forsyth.
Oh, okay.
From the city to the county. Gloria Alford and myself are the two that assign addresses for all of Forsyth County, with the exception of anything in the city limits of Kernersville.
Right.
And we maintain, create, and distribute all the addresses that are in Forsyth County.
Now, how do you assign a new address?
There's several different ways. The majority of new addresses get assigned through a plan review process that the city sets up. If a developer comes in and they own a piece of property and they want to put 50 new homes on it,
Right.
or 7 new apartment complexes, whatever, they go through this plan review process where our department gets to see that plan. We'll go through and we'll contact the developer and get street names if that's needed. And then we'll go through and assign all the addresses before the development even starts.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, but in that situation, that's interesting. Would the developer or the guy building or the lady who's building the apartment complexes, would they give you a suggestion of what they would like the main drive to be named on which those apartments set, or do you just say, hey, you don't have any choice in this, it's going to be called Hamby Drive?
No, we let the property owners decide the street names, but we review the street names against all the street names in Forsyth County to ensure that no street names are duplicated and that they fall within our current policy.
Yeah, and you and I were talking off camera. If, for example, somebody wants to build 30 apartments on a new piece of land, and they say, all right, Mr. Hamby, I want to call this Jones Drive, you're going to say, no, wait a minute. We've got a Jones Court over here. We've got a Jones Circle. You're going to have to do something to that name. What would you suggest? I mean, would they add something or?
Right. We typically give them a list of other words that could be added in front of or behind Jones to make that road name unique. So like Jones Creek or Jones Forest or Jones Hill, something like that, to make that road name unique from just Jones.
All right, let's go over a hypothetical here. Well, maybe not even hypothetical because it happens. What are some reasons for why someone's address would need to be changed? I don't mean they're moving from Yadkinville to Pittsburgh,
right?
But just in general, that you're going to initiate a change in address. Why would that? How would that come about?
Okay, sometimes we get contacted by 911 and they tell us that they've had trouble finding an address. And in some situations, the address is out of order with the other addresses along that street. And so we'll research it and we'll find out if that address is indeed out of order with the other numbers along the street. And then we'll email or we'll send a letter to that property owner, letting them know they need to change their address so that it's in sequence with the other numbers. Right now, I'm sure as many people are aware, there's a Beltway project going on through Forsyth County.
Right.
And if that Beltway has gone through and cut a road and disconnected and made two different segments of road, then we will see how many property owners are on the fewest or the smallest section of that road. And so if there's 12 on one and 40 on another, then we'll contact all 12 of those property owners and ask them for a new street name for the road that they're living on.
All right, let me get this straight. If the Beltway cuts Jones Street in half, you're not going to have, kind of like there's a Westview Drive in Winston-Salem that's not connected. Are you going to allow it to be Jones Street on both sides of the Beltway, or are you saying they have to change this one or the other?
Right. We're no longer allowing disconnected street segments to be created. And so, yeah, we would rename the segment that has the least impact, but we would allow those property owners to come up with the new street name.
All right. Can folks get more information on this? Is fascinating stuff. Do you have a particular mapping website or what?
Yeah, mapforsyth.org is our website, and there's a number of resources on there if people want to look up their address just to verify that they're in Forsyth County, which sometimes that might be surprising to some people that they don't know that they're actually in Forsyth County.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure where I am right now.
And our contact information, of course, is on that website if they
That's great.
needed help.
Matthew, you just do a great job, you in your office. I appreciate all the hard work and everything. And speaking of websites, you've noticed on this screen behind us, we've had up the whole time, connectwith.forsythcountync.gov. You can check that out too, and hope you will. Thanks for doing this.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for being with us on this edition of Forsyth County Connections, and we will see you next time.